All right, y'all are live on YouTube.
All righty. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It's Thursday, May 22nd, and we are here taking testimony on the requested one-year extension for the Rygate Power Plant's efficiency upgrade. So we'll just quickly introduce ourselves and then turn it over to our honorable witness. I'm Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Lamar 2.
Laurel Windman, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southwood, Caledonia 2. Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Jared Corey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury.
Great. And in the room we have
Dylan Zucchi, Leon for GMP.
great.
Good morning, Matt McMahon with MMR, working with Rygate on this.
Super. All right. For the record,
TJ Ford, Director of Regulated Utility Planning, for the Public Service Department.
great.
Sure. So I provided last week some written testimony to the committee. I assume you all have that. So I can go over that and just essentially answer any questions. I realized this morning that there was an hour slotted for me. I don't have necessarily an hour of testimony to go over.
We just have learned that we've learned through experience, but
Yeah.
yeah, if you could just walk us through your testimony and then we'll see if we have any questions.
Sure. Okay. So I started just by providing some background. I think you've taken a lot of testimony on that already, just the different statutes and where we've been. So I'm just going to skip that. But really, where the department comes in is talking about the impacts to ratepayers, what the plant provides and what it costs for ratepayers. And so what it provides, if the plant does provide baseload power, it's 20 megawatts. It usually has a very good capacity factor, meaning it runs in most hours of the year over, 88 to 95% in most years, unless there's an unusual situation. It also provides so it runs in those hours. It also provides a capacity resource of 20 megawatts, so that meaning it commits to and earns value for being available at the times of the regional peak loads, and that both in the summer and the winter. And so it provides kind of that value of being there, able to generate for the region. In exchange for that, so it provides the energy, the capacity, and the renewable energy credits is the third major product that it provides. It provides those attributes to utilities, which are required to take the power through the standard offer program and the legislation that 30 VSA 8009. The price that the utilities are required to pay, and it's all the utilities except Burlington Electric Department is exempt from paying for Rygate, is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So that price was set by the Public Utility Commission back in 2013, I believe, or it started in 2013 and has continued on. That price was determined to be at 2022, when the contract was first extended by the legislature. The price was reviewed and deemed to be about right and carried forward. So we're still at around 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And when I say around 10 cents a kilowatt hours, that's the base price, and that's adjusted slightly depending on the cost of their wood supply. So there's a calculation that's done to say wood supply was cheaper this year, so the price to utilities will be a little bit cheaper. Historically, that's ranged from like 9.5 cents to 11.5 cents, the price.
And that won't change. Sorry, I think you said this. That won't change within the context of this extension.
The price will not change. It will be extended for another year. That price. So in the context of this extension. So once milestones are met under the extension for efficiency improvements in the plant, then the Public Utility Commission is directed to reevaluate the price. And so the efficiency improvements could have some real value in terms of lowering the price. They're required to be considered in that price setting. And so that could turn out to have a downward pressure on what that price is reset to be.
Okay, so the price is fixed until,
I,
2028?
with the extension, I believe it's 2028. Thank you.
Rep Tori Vaughn.
No, it was that.
Okay, Rep Vaughn.
I was just confused about that too. So I thought this extension was just on the efficiency measures for the plant, not on the prices. So I just want to clarify.
Well, the price would be, my understanding is that the price is reset after the efficiency improvements at milestones are hit.
Okay, so we're not bumping out by a year anything on the pricing, or we are?
It did get bumped up by a year because
It did?
last year we made it 2027. And this year we're making it 2020.
Okay,
It's on the first page.
So what is not being bumped out is the end date. of
Right.
The contract.
oh, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so the end date is 2032 and it has been 2032 for the last 3 years since the first extension was.
All right, yeah, that's what I was.
Okay, so the other thing it provides, any long-term contract provides this, but and it's provided it as well. So it provides a hedge value, right? So that meaning ratepayers have price certainty for the resource, and that protects against times of extremely high market prices. Historically, when we looked at this, back in 2022, 2021, and did analysis and found that the contract for Rygate was approximately $5 million a year more than what utilities could otherwise have gone out and procured power for. We updated that for the last 3 years this year, and so in 2024 it was about $4 million more that ratepayers paid for Rygate than they, if they had just bought power for open market. 2023 was about $6 million more. 2022, when we had high market prices, the contract was about $1 million less than it otherwise would have cost. So that's kind of an example of that hedge value that I'm talking about here. So that's what we're paying for the hedge. In many years, it's about $5 million more. In the high price years, it provides some real value. I think the last thing, just a note, as this contract goes forward, I put it in the testimony. I don't think it really affects the extension per se, but the RECs that it provides are biomass, renewable energy credits. So it's got that biomass attribute. Our utilities sell all of those out into the regional marketplace. And right now, Connecticut has the highest value renewable portfolio standard biomass requirement. So they get about $35 a megawatt hour for those renewable energy credits. Now they have to replace those in order to meet our local renewable energy standard requirements, and they do that with lower value RECs. Those are usually existing hydroelectric RECs, about $4 or $5 a megawatt hour. So they sell the attributes out of state. In 2030, I believe it's 2030. Let me just check my testimony. Yeah, as of 2030. In Connecticut is phasing out their biomass requirement, and they will start doing that. And those RECs will have about half the value in 2030. There is a substitute market in New Hampshire, which currently is just slightly less than the Connecticut value, but it's really volatile. Sometimes it's really low value. Sometimes it's higher. So it's just kind of another uncertainty as we go forward after 2030 to think about long term. If this blend is back here again ever, that's something to think about. Like I said, I don't think it really affects the extension discussion, but I did want to just kind of put that in the back of your minds on kind of the value of the RECs. Utilities actually sell the attributes. So in our final electric portfolio, we don't see biomass in there. If you remember those slides at the beginning of the year that I showed you, what our portfolio is in the pre-REC accounting, we do have biomass from Rygate and McNeil, and in the post, we sell all those out of state. So I think
What's the revenue from those rents? And who gets them again? The utilities get them, or
the utilities get 90% of the value of the RECs, and that was so in the mid 2010s, the company that owned Rygate at the time installed and I know the acronym, not sure, I'm not good. It installed some technology that kind of clean the stack emissions. It's called a SCR, and I could get you what that actually stands for. But it cleaned the stack emissions and it made it eligible for those high value RECs in Connecticut. And at the time, the deal was we wanted them to be eligible. We wanted it to be cleaner, and we wanted it utilities to get the value. But in order to get the company to install it, they needed to recoup some of that value in order to kind of make it worthwhile for the company to do it. So they actually previously retained 50% of the RECs, and then it's kind of scaled down as their loans paid off in order to make that investment in 2010. So right now they get, that's a really long, complicated answer to your question. I'm sorry. But right now they get, utilities get 90% of the value, and the other 10% goes back to the company to pay for the operations and maintenance of the technology they installed to keep it clean and qualifying for the high values.
in that dollar amount, approximately?
Let's see. If I did 30, if I have pull out a calculator and do it real quick. If I did $30 a megawatt hour times about 160,000 megawatt hours. So if I'm allowed to pull out a calculator.
4.8 million.
Thank you. 90%.
Weird.
Should you just do that off the top of your head?
I did.
Press it.
Okay.
Party trick.
Wow. Multiply that by 90%.
I would check if you get.
No, I think he's right. I think he's right. He just, yeah.
Attractive.
So I think that is really most of my testimony here. I did have one other thing that was not in my testimony, is that a couple of years ago, the company was required to provide reports to the legislature and the department.
Thank you. Yep.
That in order to show that they were paying their suppliers on time. The previous owners had some issues doing that. And so the legislature required this reporting. And those reports come to the department and they come to the legislature, and we reviewed them, and they're certified by an auditor to show that they're true. I have the reports for the last 2 quarters of 2024 and just got the one for the first quarter of 2025. And they have been filing those. I wanted to just say, and it looks like according to those reports, they're paying their suppliers on an average, like within a couple of days. A vast improvement from where it was a few years ago.
Super. Any questions for Director 4? Yeah.
If their capacity, we're not
meant if they didn't have a capacity factor less than 0.85, how much per kilowatt hour would they lose? Or maybe I should word that question of how much of that 10 cents of a kilowatt hour is the capacity factor that you, or does everybody get capacity factors in their power, whether they're hydro?
Well, so the Rygate gets 10 cents a kilowatt hour for whatever they produce. So if they produce less, then Rygate doesn't get paid for that. If you're asking how much of the 10 cents is a component of energy and capacity and RECs, I don't have that off the top of my head. It varies. It varies year to year. Right now, the capacity market is relatively low, and so it's probably the smallest of the three primary values. If RECs are $30-$35 a megawatt hour, energy is probably 35 or 40, and capacity is, less than that, maybe a penny or $10 in the state per megawatt hour. And then the difference is what is I talked about is what's currently above market.
So we do have the president of Rygate available if we have any final questions for her. And because this is going to wrap up our Rygate testimony, we have our straw poll tomorrow morning at 8:30. So we have direct report here, and we have, Rep. Campbell.
Well, since we have some time, do you mind if I ask for another sort of 101 on how the cash flow goes with RECs in general, TJ?
How the cash flow goes with RECs.
Yeah, so you mentioned that
I'll look just to see your face, and then I'll look back at the camera.
Okay, my head's almost as bald as yours now.
So I'm not sure I do understand the question.
You mentioned 90% of the value of the RECs goes, well, anyway, just that there's a 90% and then there's a 10%, and all of that. That's what prompted the question in my head.
Oh, okay. So I think so the way the contract works is it goes through for all the standard offer projects go through VEPI, Vermont Independent Power Producers, and so they actually hold the contract on behalf of the Public Utility Commission, who's required to do it. Commission holds the contract, but VEPI manages the contract. Excuse me, and so. Rygate will show that they've generated a certain amount of energy and then
associated with it,
right, and associated RECs with that, and then I believe VEPI manages the RECs in the marketplace as well, so they're the ones that actually. I'm sorry. Let me correct that. They also the RECs get transferred as well. So the Rygate will then show up in all the utilities portfolio with ISO New England, and that shows up in the NEPOOL GIS, which is the tracking system that manages RECs. And so then they're available for the utilities to then do what they will with them, and they can contract with them out of state. But only 90% shows up in the utilities kind of portfolio because 10% is siphoned off for Rygate.
So that's the part that was new to me. So 90% shows up on the ISO New England GIS, you called it.
Well, I'm sorry. So 100% will show up in the tracking system, but 90% of it shows up in the utilities accounts, if you will, and then 10% will be in the company's account. That's how I believe it works. I will subject to check. I will contact Debbie and double check, or maybe the plant would be able to confirm that if you need to.
Okay, so the RECs, the power gets sold to the various utilities that are in the PPA, the power purchase agreement.
Right,
They get with the power, they get the RECs,
right,
but
correct,
only 90% of the total RECs.
right,
And the company that owns Rygate retains 10% for whatever operations or whatever to help defray the cost of the whatever improvements. Is that correct?
that's my understanding of it, yes.
Okay, all right. I think I get it now. Thanks.
Rep Torrey?
What was the year of those improvements and what's the life cycle of that?
I believe it was in the mid 2010s. I think maybe 2014 or 15 is when that agreement happened, and it might not have taken place until a year later. And I believe the technology will continue on. I think that would. I was thinking about this morning, is that when the renegotiation of the contract happens, we will need to see if that is something that that'll just be one of the things on the table. Has that been paid off? I think the 10% now is really just for the continued operations and maintenance, because they could just I think about it as shutting it off, even though it's more complicated than that, but it'd be cheaper not to maintain it. And they could just do that. And because if they didn't have any skin in the game with the value of the RECs, that might, we want to set up the economic incentive for them to keep it going, because it's not only a REC value, but also good for the environment.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about that. So is that part of the air permit that they have?
I believe, I imagine so. I don't know the answer to that.
Dylan, did you want to chime in?
Sure, I can provide some dates. So in 2012 is when the PUC set the original standard offer price. And then in 2013, they set a subsequent order that kind of, because the underlying statute directed all 100% of the RECs to go to the distribution utilities that are part of that power purchase agreement. And then they were receiving the lower quality Connecticut RECs, and they saw the opportunity, the plant owners at the time saw the opportunity to generate higher class RECs that could be sold into Connecticut with the installation of a selective catalytic reduction system, or SCR. And so in 2013 is when that process started, and it was kind of a sliding scale where the plant in 2013 received, maybe it was 90% at the time, but of reduced each year they reduced a lesser portion of the RECs, and the utilities received a greater portion of the RECs, bringing it closer to the underlying statute, but it capped at 90% of the utilities.
Thank you.
I'm happy to share that 2013 order.
I have with you.
So they're getting 4.8 million approximately every year for those.
For those
Right.
renewable energy credits.
Yeah.
Utilities are getting the value. So the utilities are getting the RECs and selling those in the marketplace and getting approximately that value.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the Rygate gets approximately $500,000 for help with operating costs or the efficiency upgrades.
Yeah, if you break it down that way, but really it's, what Rygate gets is the 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and they,
Okay.
and incorporated in that is kind of the requirement to maintain the status of the high value RECs. And then to do that, they have to maintain the SCR, and the equipment. And so it's kind of embedded in the price. And so the company just sees 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Would Rygate like to join, or what? I see your hand.
Well, so that would be incumbent on the committee, Madam Chair, but Matt McMahon here, did have the last 3 years of REC values, the total REC value. So in 22 it was 4.4 million. 23 it was 5.3. 24 it was 5.2. And so perhaps that's before the 90-10. That must be the total number if you are up to 4.8.
Yeah, they could have been a little higher than 30. I just used 30 as a shorthand here. But if it was 35, then that would.
And just to remind myself, with the 1-year extension we're contemplating, none of this is changing.
Correct.
Just making sure we're staying on track.
I was slow with the pen. Could that, whoever that was?
Yes.
Mention those numbers again?
Representative Campbell. So 22 was 4.4.
Yeah.
23, 5.3. 24, 5.2.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Great. Well, thanks everybody. If we're concluded, then we will probably go off live and, sorry, I lost my agenda. I'm sorry. We're back at 11 o'clock. So I think we could probably,
One
Yep.
clarification. Sorry to interrupt. One clarification. Those numbers are net to the utilities.
So that is the 9%.
So not including Rygate's 10%?
That is, I just got a text from Liddy, and that's what she has indicated.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
So what are they looking for future efficiency? Do we know what they're looking to do?
Oh, yeah, because you missed.
Oh, that's right. You're
Oh.
here. Yeah.
Good.
We
Okay.
can
Okay.
fill you in. We took pretty extensive testimony from Rygate on the work that they're doing to
Okay.
why things have changed and why they're back asking for a 1-year extension and the work that they're, how they're planning to meet the efficiency
Okay.
requirement. So we can fill you all in.
Okay.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay. So, alrighty. I think we can go off live then. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we've got testimony at 11 and then our straw poll vote on Rygate tomorrow.